Bienvenidos al Mr. Franquicia Podcast, el podcast en español número 1 en el mundo maravilloso de las franquicias, conducido por su servidor Rafael Álvarez. Estamos en vivo desde el piso 85 del One World Trade Center desde la ciudad de Nueva York. Así que prepárese, el programa va a comenzar. Saludos y bienvenido a el podcast número 1 completamente en bilingüe en inglés y español. Greetings. Today we're going to have a very special program. We have a very special friend of mine today, someone that I know for quite a while. We're going to be talking about the topic is pay attention, those people that are planning to launch a franchise. If you already have one, and you're planning to launch a franchise, it's very important that you listen to this show, because today we're going to be talking about the importance of having a good CPA who has the knowledge and the experience about franchising. Wow, we're going to be talking about numbers. And today our guest is someone that I consider my friend, someone very special. I know him for quite a while already. His name is the one and only Mr. Barry Knepper, who is the franchise CPA. He's the CEO and the owner of his, CPA firm. You know, he has over 40 years, a career for over 40 years as senior financial executive, including the international public accounting firm, Ernst and Young, and also while serving as a CFO of an $100 million company. He managed its initial public offering, or better known as a IPO. And also he raised a total of more than $100 million of equity and debt financial for expansion. Barry is a member of the board of directors and chairman of the audit committee of Coffee Holding Company, which is a public traded, integrated wholesale coffee roaster and distributor. He has over 22 years of experience in franchising and provides part-time CFO services and auditing to over 150 franchisors. Oh my goodness. So let's all give a round of applause to Barry Knepper. Barry, this one goes to you, my friend. Thank you, Barry, for taking the time. Welcome.
Thank you, Rafael. I don't know if you realize it or not, but we know each other about 9 years already.
Oh my goodness, time flies. I remember when I met you. And the beauty of it is that I have been able to learn so much from you, Barry, and you are really a true trendsetter in the franchising industry, because you know so much about, I would say, specifically financing or anything that has to do with franchise ordering, financial, certified financial, et cetera, which is really key, a really key component to, to be able to run and operate a successful franchise. But before we talk about franchising, I want people to get to know, who is Barry Knepper, my friend. I know that you are a true New Yorker. I know that you love, I was gonna say Yankees, but I know that you love the Mets, right?
No. My parents met at Yankee Stadium.
There you go. So you are a Yankee fan.
On a blind date. So no, I'm a lifelong Yankee fan.
So what were you born, Barry? And
I was born.
Went to school.
I was born in Bronx Lebanon Hospital on the concourse.
Oh, in the Bronx, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Back, this was. I'm not going to give my exact date of birth, but it was a time after World War II when housing was in a short supply, and my parents lived with my grandparents, and they lived on a street called T-Bot Avenue in the Bronx, which is one block off the concourse, and it runs from Fordham Road north for about only 7 or 8 blocks. So a lot of people are not familiar with the street, but it's still there. And I just, in fact, recently drove by to see if I could stir up any old memories. And I do remember what the outside and the inside of the building was like, but that's about it, because I was literally only like 3 or 4 years old when they moved out of that building. So I lived there when I was an infant, and then
Wow.
I went to visit my grandparents. But that was a long time ago. But
No,
I grew up, and then my parents, got a few bucks together and bought a house in Queens, which was like back in those days where you moved if you got some money.
yep.
And I basically grew up in Queens through college. And then when I got married, I bought a house in Queens. And then
Which school do you go to?
I went to
Which
Queens
school you went to?
College. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm a
of
New York
course.
City
If
person. I
you
went
went
to
to
Queens
Queens
College,
College, huh?
and then I went to Baruch College after that for my MBA. And I mean, back in those days, believe it or not, the City University of New York was free.
I
The City
know. I remember. I'm a product.
is also Raphael because you went to City College, right?
I went to City College. Yeah, I'm a product. But unfortunately, at that time that I went, I had to pay, Barry. I couldn't. I wasn't around at the time that it was free. So you were able to take
Yeah, it
the
was free.
opportunity.
I mean, and believe it or not, my friends used to complain about the $34 semester activity fee that we had to pay. Can you
I
imagine?
know.
Anyway, yeah. So when I graduated, I went to work for. I went in the account. I was an accounting major. I went to work at another big firm, and then I switched over to Ernst and Young, which is one of the remaining big four accounting firms. And I worked there for about 4 or 5 years, and then I went into private industry, and I was actually in the entertainment industry for about 20 years, and really enjoyed that. But the business changed a little bit.
Doing what in the entertainment industry?
I worked for a company called Unitel Video, which was a publicly traded. That was the one where I took the company public. It was a publicly company traded facility company for the industry. So when cable TV started to blow up in the 80s in
Yeah.
terms of popularity, there just wasn't enough editing rooms and TV studios or mobile trucks. So that's what our company did. We provided the technology behind the entertainment industry.
Wow.
And we grew we grew 20-fold during the 17 years that I was there. We expanded from New York to Chicago to Pittsburgh to Los Angeles, did a couple more public offerings, raised a lot of money from banks, and it was a great experience. And then after doing that for 20 years, I started working for a multi-concept franchisor, which was in the food industry. Did that for
As a what?
the
As a
CFO,
CPA or working?
general CFO for that company.
Okay.
And then after a few years, I decided to go out on my own. That was about 20 years ago, and I started providing royalty audits for franchisors because anybody who's in the franchise industry knows that that's really the revenue stream that your company is valued on, how much you get in royalties. And from that, I expanded into financial statement audits because every franchisor has to have a franchise disclosure document every year, which requires audited financials. And then from there, I expanded
Yeah.
into part-time CFO services. So I act as a part-time CFO for various different franchisors, including ATAX, which was
That,
Raphael's company until he sold it.
that's how we connected. I
Yeah,
remember.
that's how we met.
Yeah.
9 years ago.
Yeah.
So um, when I went on my own after a few years of doing that, I started marketing myself, and it's just been an incredible ride. I mean, I started off with 2 or 3 clients, and now between my partner and myself, last year we did over 120 financial statement audits during
Wow.
a 5-month period for franchisors of all sizes and all
I was
industries.
gonna ask you that. I mean, what type of franchising are you really
I would say,
using
yeah,
doing for?
we only work for franchisors, not franchisees. So we're
Yeah,
only
franchise or what
uh,
level? How many locations? How big are they?
anywhere from 0 to, let's say, 75 units is our sweet spot.
Okay.
Um, we work with a lot of startups, a lot of emerging firms. I would say about half of them are food service related, and the other half are pretty much service. So there's a lot of after school programs, janitorial services, you name it. I mean, in this country, you drive down any main street, probably at least half of these stores you see are franchised
Yes.
with one kind of another. So it's an explosive industry, and there's always new companies coming into it. And as crazy as it might seem, since the pandemic started, there's been even more new franchisors than ever before.
Well, entrepreneurship increased. I mean, people that used to have a secure job end up losing them, decided to go in a different direction. So now a lot more people are becoming entrepreneur. They open up the business, and obviously, those understand the potential of franchising. They are taking advantage. But can you tell us? I mean, I know that you have connected with a lot of franchisees, a lot of people. Can you tell all of our listener how wonderful? I mean, give us your opinion about the franchising industry. Why do you think that franchising it is so unique and so profitable?
Well, what's great about franchising is if you have a business concept that you believe is has some secret sauce, let's say, why
Uh-huh.
it differentiates you from everybody else. You want to expand. So you might have one or two company owned units. But typically, especially if it's a bricks and mortar business, it's very expensive to open another location. You have to acquire the real estate, you have to build out the space, you have to pay the franchise fee. So I'm not well. That's if you buy a franchise, but a typical even small, even like a Subway costs you $350,000, and that's the cheapest you can find around. Most of the food service businesses that open up are six, seven, $800,000 to build out the space.
Wow.
So it's difficult to raise enough money to continue to build your system where you own all the units. So when you get into franchising, you're basically growing your business with other people's money. You sell a franchise, they have to come up with the money to open up the location. So it enables you to grow the business much more rapidly than if you were doing it yourself.
So would you agree then that anybody that has a successful business and want to expand it, obviously is either by opening up what is called corporate owned locations, right? Or branches,
Right.
compare with franchising. Would you say
Well,
that franchising is the easiest and fastest way to expand and grow without having to come up with a lot of money? Is that what it is?
that's I think that's the biggest advantage that franchising has, that you can sell and open units where other people are putting up the money and also managing the unit, so you don't have to have staff in place at multiple locations, and you can grow your business very rapidly. And there've been many cases of that, where you can think of some of the franchisors that have opened up, let's say in the last 10 or 15 years, that have gone from no units to hundreds of units. A great example is Five Guys hamburgers.
Uh-huh.
They created the better burger concept, and they went from no units to over 500 units in a space of only 6 or 7 years.
Oh my
It
God.
would be virtually impossible to do that
Yeah.
if you weren't a franchise system.
Now, Barry, what do you think sometimes franchise brands fail? Why sometimes they go out of business?
I would say the number one reason that people go out of business is, well, first off, you have to have a viable concept. And I do see a lot of people who they're like the 50th pizza concept to hit the market. And they're no different than, really significantly different than any of the other 49. And they think because they have a great following in their niche of the world that they're going to be successful. So that's number one. People who have business concepts that really aren't unique. Number two, and probably the most important, is being undercapitalized and not getting the right financial advice when you start. So
So getting that financial advice is
at
really
the
key
beginning, not when you run into trouble, but getting it up front.
before.
And yeah, I mean, I think after you hire a franchise attorney, getting a good CPA/part-time CFO may be the most important thing you can do, because I can tell you from my experience, a lot of franchises that I've seen go into business, I would have told them don't do it because they don't have enough money. Like any other business that you start up, you have to have money for a rainy day and unexpected things. You cannot be doing it totally on the shoestring. So, unfortunately, there are franchise consultants who are just interested in getting paid, who will shepherd anybody through the process. And then they get through and they've spent $100,000 developing operations manuals and everything else, and they don't have a dime to run the business or to hire a sales staff or whatever. So to me, those are the two major reasons. Now, still, having enough money to start a franchise system is still a tiny fraction of what it costs to open up 3 or 4 company-owned units. We're not talking $500,000. We're talking about a reasonable reserve of money so that you can take the next step and grow the system and have money for advertising and a sales staff and internet presence and all the other things you need to grow any business. So those are the two things I see. And unfortunately, a lot of times I'm brought in after the fact to try to save, clean up a problem that could have been avoided had some, not necessarily me. I'm not trying to sell myself. Anybody who has the experience in franchising who could consult with the owner up front and doesn't have any skin in the game other than just, working with
Well,
that client.
I can tell you, and you know this. I build my brand completely from the scratch with empty handed. It's really rough. It's really bad when you get into the franchising industry and you don't have the resources to be able to sustain, and keep the brand alive and keep. I mean, I'm sure that you've seen a lot of multiple brands with great concepts, a great system, great everything was fantastic, but they have to go out of business because they run out of money. Have you seen many of those?
Oh, yeah, it happens all the time where people just don't, they let their enthusiasm get ahead of, doing a real reality check about where they are. And as I said, with all due respect to the franchise attorneys who I love because they refer me most of my business, they will they will let they will create a franchise document for anybody who has enough money to pay them. And as more than one of them have said to me, it's not my responsibility to tell the client whether I think they're going to be successful or not. But I think your accountant, your part-time CFO, your CPA, that is his responsibility. So if you engage them at the beginning, you may avoid a lot of bumps in the road, including not being successful.
So technically, I guess it is as important to hire an attorney. It is as important to hire a CPA at the beginning of launching a franchise as hiring the attorney that is gonna
Well,
prepare all
the
the
attorney's
documents,
there
right?
to create the legal documents that are required by the state regulators. But that's where it ends. They don't really provide you with business advice. They don't tell you how to recruit and hire a sales consulting firm. They don't tell you how to, do you have enough money to make it through the first year if, things don't go as well as you thought they were going to go. They don't do any of that. They're just interested in getting the legal documents prepared and getting it through the regulators.
So
And
when someone is interested in buying a franchise after the franchise is already established, I already if you wanna you can go and check some of my previous podcasts, but we always talk about the famous FDD, which is the franchise disclosure document, the document that is approved by the Attorney General and is given to any prospects. Within that document, Barry, you know better than anybody else, there are some numbers that are supposed to show up. Tell us about all the numbers are on the FDD.
okay, well,
For anyone that is interested in buying a franchise, what they should be looking at.
there's four sections that really have financial information. The first one is what it costs to buy the franchise and what the ongoing fees are. The franchise fees, the royalties, the training fees, the annual conference fees, etc. And some franchises will nickel dime you to death. You want to make sure you understand exactly what you're paying for. The second one is you have to have audited financial statements every single year, which is where I usually come in. So that's an expense that you have to do every year. So you're required to keep your books in a way that somebody like myself can actually do the audit. A lot of times I'll see clients who will hand me, we used to call it a shoebox audit, where they just hand me a bunch of papers in a shoebox and they say, here, audit my financials. Well, that doesn't work. You need to have a competent bookkeeper instead of books, generally using QuickBooks or something like that. The third area is what we call Section 19 of the FDD.
The famous item 19, right?
19, sorry. Yeah, well, that's where you, as where the franchisor can provide information about what franchisees have done, both from sales or profits. But you have to be very careful when you read, as a franchisee, you have to be very careful to read that because they generally will, not generally, they'll always put it in a way that is the most favorable to them. So um, franchisors sometimes get into trouble for putting in information which isn't totally accurate. Like they'll only show you the 5 best franchisees who is the most successful. So people get sued all the time for item 19. But if there is item 19, don't read that thing and think that you are going to be as successful as the most successful that they present.
So an advice for someone that is trying to buy a franchise and they look at the FDD and see item 19 and they look at the numbers. So would you advise them to talk to other franchisees directly to connect?
Well, that was going to be number four. Number four, well, it isn't really a set of numbers, is in the back, I forget which, I think it's one of the schedules in the back, they have to list all the current franchisees and all the franchisees that have been terminated for one reason or another in the last year.
Yeah.
I recommend people not talk to the current franchisees, talk to the ones who were terminated and find out why they're no longer in the system. Now, obviously, some of those people are just going to be disgruntled because for what, could be their own, but you're going to find out, some of the dirty laundry that you're not going to ever hear from the franchisor. And then in addition to that, call some of the current franchisees and ask them what they think about being a franchisee. What's the positives? What's the negatives? What are the surprises? And don't ever, ever, ever let the franchisor tell you which ones to call. Because he's going to obviously send you to his brother-in-law, to the best performer, to somebody who just sold it for, twice what they paid for it. You want to randomly select ones that are currently in the system, as well as a few that are no longer in the system.
And what happened if a potential buyer find out that the franchisor is lying on the item 19? Can they get reported? Can they what type of action can you take?
If a franchisee does it, I mean, if you're a prospective buyer of a franchise, walk away. Walk away.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I would do. I mean, listen, everybody, when they're trying to sell their business, puts the best foot forward. They exaggerate a little bit. They might tell a white lie or two. You catch them in some kind of major, contradiction to the facts. You have to realize that if they're going to do that when they're trying to sell you, what are they going to do once you're in?
Yeah.
So I think it's no different than any other business relationship. If the other party you're working with is not truthful, you have to suspect everything they say.
So repeat the four items, the four points that someone that's looking to buy a franchise should be on the lookout.
Yeah, Section 5, which gives all the costs, the franchise fees, the royalties, the training fees, and all the other miscellaneous costs. Then there's Section 19.
That's item 7, I think.
I keep saying section. Item 19, which has the voluntary disclosure of the sales and or profits of franchisees, but it's typically selective. To be careful on that. There's the audited financial statements, which is what I do. It's audited just like every other company that has an audit, except that, as I was going to mention, that the accounting for franchising is significantly different than most other companies. So that's why it's important to work with a CPA who is familiar with the franchise accounting. And then the last but not least is the franchisors who are in the system and not in the system. But look, there's a lot of other important information.
What do you mean that it's in the system, but it's not in the system?
Well, in other words, the ones who are no longer franchisees have to be listed also. Okay. So, if you contact one or two of those,
there is a list. If you have 50 franchises and 20 decided to leave, those 20 have to be listed. So
right.
20 active, 20 are gone, and then so what you're recommending is that the prospect that is buying a franchise should look for those 20 to see why they left.
Yeah, I mean, and look, if there's 50 current franchisees and 20 that have dropped out in the past year, to me that's a red flag. There's just too many that have dropped out recently.
That is correct.
I believe you only have to include people who have left in the last 12 months. So that's somewhat limiting, I remember, one thing I forgot to mention was I was actually a franchisee myself for 7 years.
How long?
7 years of a business coaching franchise.
Oh, a business coaching. The name?
The Alternative Board. And sorry about that. Somebody just went to my office. It was a business coaching franchise where I would coach small business owners and then run a board of directors meeting once a month where each of the small business owners met together and they all served as each other's board of directors. It was very, very exciting concept. And in fact, I still have a half a dozen of those people from. I stopped doing that in 2012. I still have a half a dozen of those people that are my current CFO clients.
Wow.
So that was a great experience, and it not only did it provide me with those clients, but it gave me what I consider to be an extremely unique perspective. I've never run into another CPA in the entire country who's both working as a CPA for franchisors and was a franchisee himself. So why is it unique? Because I understand the mentality of a
That
franchisee
is
because
key.
I had one.
Yeah,
And the franchise relationship is very unique because as a franchisor, the franchisees are your customers and your partners at the same time.
that is correct.
And you can't think of any other relationship really that exists that's like that. So you want them to be successful.
Well, well, Barry. I mean, the only relation that I know is your wife, you and your wife, right?
Well, I don't know about the customer part, but
Well, the-
the partner, yes.
yeah, that's the way I compare the franchising industry. When you're selling a
It,
franchise,
it,
it's
it,
like a long-term relationship. It's like you better make sure that you are selecting the right person because you're gonna be married with that person for such a long time, right?
well, yeah, I mean that's very true about when you're a franchisor. You want to, even though you're looking, especially when you're first starting, you want to grow. You want to add franchises to the system because it brings in money up front and it brings in royalty revenues, and that's how you grow and be successful. But it's extremely important that when you first start out, and this goes back again to having enough money at the beginning, that you just don't take anybody with a pulse and a checkbook. You want to be selective. You want to take people who you really feel in your heart have the dedication, the money, and the knowledge to be successful.
Now,
So,
Barry, what happened then after you become a franchisor? You start selling the franchises, and now you're managing your franchisees. How complex is the royalty collections? I mean, I know that you are a very good auditor. You have audited a lot of people, a lot of companies. That's
oh,
something that, how,
probably at this point between the current clients that I have and well, and the ones that you know I no longer do business with, primarily because they're out of business, is 150 to 175 different companies, and I've definitely know that having a good, efficient royalty collection and reporting is extremely important. And I see a trend over the last couple of years of people going towards billing for royalties more frequently. Most franchisors will bill for royalties once a month when the month is over. The problem with that is it gets to be a large enough number that a lot of franchisees don't can't write a check for $5,000 at once a month. So collecting $1,200, 4 times a month becomes a lot more doable for them. The second thing I see is more and more people are just automatically ACHing the money out of the franchisee's account. I actually have right now one of my part-time CFO clients that's a franchisor. He goes into their bank account every single day. He looks at their account. He doesn't have access to move money around, but he goes into their bank account every single day and sees what they deposited and does an ACH on a daily basis of his royalties and brand development fees on a daily basis.
wow,
So
that's
he gets paid faster than anybody else, faster than the employees, faster than his landlord, faster than any of the other vendors. And I think that is freaking awesome. Now, he does it on a cash basis, which means he only gets paid when they get paid. Whereas a lot of franchisors, they they get paid conceivably before the franchisee has actually gotten the money. So if you bill once a month and they're billing their customers, they may not get paid for another 45 or 60 days, but they owe them the franchisor. I would gladly exchange his system for the other system anytime. Getting paid every day based upon what is in the account
definitely.
assures you of getting paid.
That is very key. That is very key. Collect the money, collect the royalties. Now, obviously, we all hope because most of the franchising system is like an honest system. People have to report all the income that they're having. But as we know, not everybody is honest enough to do
Really?
the thing. And the reality is, you better than anybody else, when you do your audit, you find a lot of people cheating the system or cheating the franchisor. Then what are the consequences when people don't report
So
all the income
I, I
avoiding paying royalties?
I actually started my own business based on doing royalty audits because I had been the CFO of a franchisor for a few years. And when I went out on my own, I said, while I was a CFO, I was only approached once in 4 years to do, if somebody wanted an outside person to do royalty auditing for us. And I said, wow, what an untapped market. So I sent out postcards to about 500 medium sized franchisors between 50 and 300 units. And I started a business of doing royalty audits for those kind of companies. And honestly, I am not exaggerating here. I would say 95% of the audits I did resulted in a change, usually
Wow.
for a couple of reasons. Either they were dishonest, they made accounting errors, or they just were behind and they didn't know what they were doing. So there was purposeful, non purposeful, and people who were actually going out and cheating.
And
Now,
I should say that I learned something from you, that usually it is very easy for you to catch a franchisees that is not reporting all their income to the franchisor, because usually what they three things have to match, and those are the three things that you look at, right? The bank statements, if I recall, this is, tell me if I'm wrong. I know that you look at the bank statement, the corporate tax return preparation, and the royalties report that was
now
collected, right?
there's
The royalty income.
not it didn't apply to a tax because a tax wasn't required to sales tax. But if you think about food service, I believe every state in the country has a sales tax on restaurants.
It
And if
is.
half the franchisors are restaurants, so the fourth one, which is usually the one you really catch the food service people on, are sales tax.
Sales taxes, yeah.
Because like in New York, sales tax is really high. It's 8.625%. Where I live on Long Island, it's probably different than the city, but it's in the high eights everywhere. Think about that.
Yeah.
Every dollar that you don't report, when they don't pay royalties on that, they're also not paying, they're collecting the money from the customer and not paying it to the state.
Mistake. Yeah, that is very dangerous. The
And
state, I mean, they shut him down quite right away.
what?
They shut him down. So they could really close the restaurant if you don't pay the money.
A lot of places, what happens is they get audited by New York State sales tax, and they haven't paid, and they get caught for 3 years worth of unpaid sales tax plus the penalties and interest could put them out of business.
Yep.
And what makes it worse is that the owner of the business is personally liable for that money. He cannot
He has
walk
to
away
pay it.
from it.
Yeah, yeah. He has to
It's
pay
not like income tax where if you don't have the money, they can just keep coming after you, but then they can't go to take it out of your bank account. They can't put you in jail. With sales tax, you have to pay that money because when you collect it, it's not your money. You're collecting it on behalf of the government. So when I do the royalty audits, it's like shooting fish in a barrel because most people who are in cash businesses, franchisees cheat a lot, and most of them are not smart enough to cover their tracks. So now the franchisor does an audit of a franchisee and he finds a difference.
uh
Almost every single franchise agreement that I've seen has a provision in it that if they're audited and there's a discrepancy of more than 2%, which is really small, that they can be assessed all the back money plus penalties plus interest plus the cost of the audit, and it subjects them to potential termination as a franchisee.
Wow.
So, but if you don't do auditing, none of that matters. So I'm always, it seems self-serving when I tell franchisors this because obviously it's one of the things I do for a living. But I'm an advocate of auditing every franchisee in the first year or two so that they know you mean business, and then randomly one more time during the life of their franchise agreement.
Uh,
It's it's just to keep people honest. It's like Ronald Reagan said about the nuclear agreement with Russia back in the 80s or 70s. He
uh-huh.
said, "We trust you, but we want to verify it." You don't want to call the people liars or cheaters, but on the same hand, everybody be more comfortable if we verify that what you're saying is true.
I'm Barry. What's the difference between a desk audit and a site audit?
Well, the royalty audits can be done either remotely, we call it desk audit, or you can physically go to the location. I'm an advocate of doing some of them in person because my experience has been, particularly in the on the restaurant side, which, as I said, is about half of all franchisors. You will see things in the operation of the restaurant that you won't see if you're not there. And and when I do a royalty audit, I also do what we call secret shopping, which is important for retail businesses, where you go in and the people in the store don't know that you're not really a customer, that you're really there to check up on them. So I go in and I see, were the tables cleaned? Are the bathrooms clean? Did they take my order properly? Did they ring it up properly? Did the food come out, in the way you expected it? If you go into a franchise, you expect the food to taste the same no matter where you are. If you're in McDonald's in Hawaii or New York, the food should be exactly the same. So we do all of that in addition to the financial side. Now, on the financial side, I had a client where I went in and it was a sandwich shop. I'm not going to say which one it was. It wasn't one of the major brands. They had about 75 units. I went in there and I went in there at 8 o'clock when they opened up in the morning, and they had a whole bunch of catering orders sitting on the top of the counter. And they got delivered because they were for corporations. When they're having a meeting, they bring in breakfast, bagels, muffins for the people at the meeting. When I actually did the audit, I couldn't find the revenue from many catering orders. And what they were doing was, instead of ringing those up, they were billing those people old fashioned, like by hand. And the corporation would mail a check in once a month. And the guy had a separate bank account that he was depositing the money into.
Wow.
I would have never picked up on that if I was only doing it remotely on my desk in my office at home. So at least when I now, obviously there's a time consideration and a cost to that. So if I'm doing 20 audits, I might not do 20 in person, but I generally will tell a franchisor, let me do the first 3 or 4 in person. And it does two things. The great thing about royalty audits, it's really not about the money you're going to collect from doing it. It's more about getting all of the franchisees who all find out about this, because there's no secrets in franchising. As soon as you audit the first one, everybody else is going to know. Now, if they were all cheating by 10% and you get them to cheat by 5%, that extra 5% all goes to the bottom line with no cost. And now you're collecting 95% of what you should collect. Well, it's not 100%, but it's better than 90, because if it's another 50, 75, or $100,000 a year, there's absolutely no cost except for what you're paying me to do 3 or 4 audits. So I'm a big advocate of franchisors doing audits. And
Site
starting
audit.
at the beginning, and starting at the beginning of the franchise, so that if you start 5 years afterwards, then people think you're trying to single them out. If you do it at the beginning and people know it's part of the process, they will be more honest in reporting their revenues, and it'll keep a better relationship with the franchisees.
Totally, totally, totally. I'm showing your website, as you can see here. I know that you recently got a huge, I would say, recognition. That's the word, from from the magazine
Oh
or
yeah,
the
the
publishing
well,
company. Can you tell us about it?
yeah, Entrepreneur Magazine,
Uh,
which is a magazine that most people who have small businesses have probably read at one time or another, does a survey every year on the franchising industry, and they list the top franchises by category, and then they also list the top suppliers to the franchise industry. So the consulting firms, the attorneys, the CPAs, et cetera. So, and this is a national survey. Um, the franchise CPA, well, it's just a couple of people, myself, my partner, and a couple of people. We're tiny, tiny compared to the big accounting firms. We were voted by the franchise community as the #4 best franchise accounting firm in the country.
wow, number
Number
4.
three of the largest worldwide accounting firms. So I was like blown away from that.
Yeah, let me give you a round of applause, Barry, because this is that is huge. That is huge. That your firm was ranked number four. You said in Entrepreneur Magazine, in
Yeah,
terms of what is it,
I
audit,
called them
accounting.
up. I asked them why were we not number one, but they said it's confidential. I couldn't find that.
I
But
like the name. I like the name of your company though. The franchise CPA, straight to the point. This is what I do. This is who I am. This is me. Right. This is
yeah,
Barry Cooper, the
honestly,
franchise CPA.
Raphael, I know you're a big technology guy, and I actually one of my part-time CFO clients is a website development company.
Okay.
So I have a barter arrangement with him where he did my website for me. And I actually haven't redone it probably in 4 to 5 years,
Uh-huh.
but I can't even begin to tell you how many clients I have gotten from this website.
No, it is. It looks very, very, very clean.
Try to be true to
Very, very, very unique. Very great. I mean, the straight to the point. You promote your services very well, and people get the message. So, Barry, people that want to find out, that one might be looking, anyone that is trying to launch a new franchise venture and looking now that they figured it out, they hear it from you that you have to hire a CPA at the beginning. Don't wait for later. The sooner the better. How can they find you?
well, if you go to this website, I don't know if you can see it there, but we have a 646 number, which is,
646-844-6786. The number is right on the top, and
and
I
then
see it.
when you call that number, it'll give you the option of calling myself, Barry, or my partner, Ken. Or you can just email me at barry at thefranchisecpa.com.
And if they send an email to this email that I see on the website, is info at
Yeah, that'll come to me also.
that goes to you. Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. All right, there you have it. I mean, you guys can go to the franchisecpa.com. That's Barry's Knepper website. I have the website displayed on the screen, so you guys can write it down. If you're looking for a great part-time CFO, a full-time CFO, or whatever you need assistant in creating a financial statement or financial, or perhaps you need an audit, or you need someone that go and audit all your franchisees, Barry Nepper is the guy to call. Then you have a call or visit his website. You will be able to find his information, so you can contact him. So, Barry, any other information that you want to share with us related to the importance of having great financials?
What I would say is I'm not a clock watcher. I'm not an attorney who bills by every 6 minutes. I'm happy to talk to anybody on the phone. As I said, I was the CFO of a multi-concept franchisor. I was a franchisee myself, and I do royalty audits, part-time CFO services, and financial statement audits for franchisors. So I feel like I've been on all sides of the transaction, and I'm happy to talk to anybody, and I don't send them a bill.
So
So
what I can add to that, Barry, since I met you and I know you, I mean, it got to be a reason why someone like me having so many brands now is still working with Barry. And the fact is that Barry, he's a fair guy, believe it or not. He's not trying to squeeze the franchise sword. He understands that we are in business to make money. Sometimes things doesn't work out the way you are expected, and it's a very tough business, but Barry has been very fair, very very upfront, and he'll tell you things like it is, and making sure that you keep the company afloat. And his goal is that you remain in business because he knows that obviously if you get out of the business, if you close your business, he's gonna lose business. But I like to that's what I like about you, Barry, and I can highly recommend you with anyone that is listening. And this is coming from me personally because I don't like to recommend people, but I mean I've been working with you and I know how fair you are and the way you treat your clients, and I like that about you. You have treated me with a lot of respect throughout all these years, and I never ever felt that you either try to do the wrong thing. It's the opposite. Every time that you came around was just trying to figure out a way how to really help me to take the company to the next level, which I really, really appreciate it, Barry.
thank you.
All right, guys. Anything else? There you have it. Barry Nepper, the franchise CFO. So, Barry, this has been very educational, and I hope that all the listeners and the viewers can really appreciate that, and they can follow you, visit the website, and please don't forget to click like in all of our social media platforms, and listen to the podcast. I mean, we are everywhere now in relation to podcast platform. platforms and also in YouTube if you want to see the video. So I think that's all we have for today. I'm looking forward to reconnect again with you guys in the next podcast. And I really want to thank Barry Knepper once again, the franchise CFO, for participating and sharing with us so much valuable information in relation to having your financials up to date and doing the right thing for prospects and franchisees. So Barry, thank you until next time.
Thank
Ciao.
you, Bill.
Yeah, bye. Muchas gracias por escuchar nuestro podcast. Esperamos que la información haya sido de su agrado. Manténgase en sintonía, síganos en todas las plataformas de social media y visite nuestra página en el internet www.mrfranquicias.com. Hasta la próxima.